Well, as you can tell, February is Black History Month, and I want to take a moment to say thank you to the African American Circle from our center in Dallas for actively putting their values into action and making these videos for us that we've been watching all month, featuring African American spiritual leaders in our own Centers for Spiritual Living movement. I appreciate that very much. Our theme, as you heard, for February is integrity, and our affirmation is this. Won't you read it with me? I am truthful in facts and motives, and the topic for today is our highest spiritual values, and it all works together to create a really rich spiritual life in which you and I are invited to discover what our values are, and then aim to live a life that is guided by what we value. See if we can put our motives and our speaking and our thinking and our actions into alignment with the things that we say that we value. Now, I learned a lot about values just recently. Last week, a couple of days ago, I was in the Kingdom of Bhutan. I was on a spiritual pilgrimage with people from the Center for Spiritual Living here. We went there to learn about the local spiritual practices. And the Bhutanese have an amazing affinity for their spiritual practice. They've got a practice that involves hand gestures. You see it everywhere. They place their hands in the prayer position, first at their head, and then in their mouth, and then at their chest, to represent purification of thought, purification of speech, and purification of heart or action. And then they get on their hands and knees and place their forehead to the ground as a symbol of respect and reverence. And as I was watching this, which you see everywhere, I saw how there's built into this physical action a sort of personal reminder, like a confirmation. This is what I want my life to be about: right thinking, right speaking, right action, and deep respect and reverence. So the focus is being returned constantly to what is important to the individual's spiritual life. Our own national organization, Spiritual Centers for Spiritual Living, is bringing focus onto our values similarly to see how we can, as an organization, in our thinking and in our speaking and our actions, live from our values. And one of the values of our organization is diversity. Another one of our values is oneness. Another one of our values is inclusivity, and we're exploring how to live from those. Now, how did we get to all of these values? It's an interesting story. We did a survey, an international survey of all of the members of Centers for Spiritual Living, and asked, what's important to you? That's important because values can't be imposed on a people. They must be discovered for them to be real. So anyone who wanted to participate in the survey could self-select to do so. And the result is that the list of values that emerge don't represent only the leaders or the people in power, but the survey reflected the broader community and what is important to us. As an individual, you can also find out what your values are. There are several ways to do it. One fun way is to take a moment and think about the people in your life who you admire, people you look up to, who inspire you. Think about the example that they set for you. And the way you want to do it is take a moment and write their names down on a piece of paper. Now, they could be living, or they could have already passed on. In some cases, they may be historical figures, or they could even be fictional characters. You just write down their names, and then next to each person's name, write down the things, the qualities that you admire about them, and try to use one-word qualities, like courage, integrity or truth, to make this exercise easier to do. Because what are you going to do when you finish the whole list is you're going to examine what's on the paper and see what is the link, the common link. What are the words that are recurring often? Because that will tell you something about what is important to you. You may even think of it as, this is why I've come to this earth plane, to express that. You may also notice then that when you have not lived in harmony with those values in your own life, that things get difficult. You know, when you're out of sync with your values, things get uncomfortable and stressful. I know that's true. I remember when I did this exercise for the first time for myself, I did it during a time in my life when things were out of sync and I was struggling, and somebody introduced me to the exercise. So I sat down and looked at all of the important people, the role models in my life, and I wrote down all the qualities that they represented, and there it was. 2 words kept just popping out of the page at me: truthfulness and kindness. And I realized, yeah, I do value that, yet I wasn't living a truthful and kind life at the time. I was a bit fuzzy when it came to being accurate and truth and facts and motives. And I grew up in a family that used sarcasm as a way of communication. And when the sarcasm came out of my mouth, it was really unkind. And so when I became aware of that, I had to begin to make the slow and steady shift to bring myself into alignment with truthfulness and kindness in my thinking and in my speech and in my action. And I found that as I did this move, things began to become easier. Oh, this exploration. I said I valued kindness, but truly I was a bit self-centered. I had to learn to authentically show kindness by turning my attention to people in a genuine way. Each step made things easier for me, and that's the positive side effect of getting clear on your highest values. And I believe the result is better self-esteem. A person who's living in sync with their values feels better. It was humbling during that time to discover how out of sync I was with my own values. You know, it's embarrassing. And it's difficult to have those kind of conversations with yourself, you know. And maybe if you were like me, especially like I was in those days, I tended to avoid difficult conversations with myself, you know, especially if these conversations showed me up in a poor light, or made me feel vulnerable. You know, I didn't want to think about it. Made me feel exposed, you know. Kindness and truthfulness and integrity. These are great things on paper. But when it comes to living them, they can be demanding masters to serve when I start to ask myself the question, but where am I dropping the ball on this? You know, 20 years ago, I made an announcement at service. I announced that we would spend some time studying discrimination and prejudice. I announced that we would show a documentary, and then we would follow up by a discussion group. And not only that, we would do it 4 times. We would dedicate a whole month of Wednesdays to exploring discrimination and prejudice. And when I made the announcement, it was met with a standing ovation, which told me this is very important. Yes, we value this. And then the first Wednesday came and we were all ready and set up, and no one showed up. I'm not kidding. No one came. I mean, it was just me and the staff and the projector. So you can imagine how I felt a bit nervous about presenting this year's theme, you know, about social action and spirituality and its potentially difficult conversations about what does inclusivity mean to a spiritual being? What does diversity mean? What about integrity? How does that show up in a spiritual life? How do I put that into action? What will these values demand of me? How will I need to think and speak and act so that I show that I embody them? I was afraid you weren't going to show up. Oh, but we've come a long way in 20 years, and here we all are thinking about it. So I want to take a moment to appreciate you and sincerely thank you for being here, for not only saying, yes, I want to be more truthful in my facts and motives and have integrity in my life, but also for being willing to show up and lean into the difficult conversations about where what we say and how we are may need to be brought closer together. You know, after we showed the video deconstructing white privilege 2 weeks ago, do you know that our diversity discussion group in the afternoon had 3 times much attendance than regular? That's a message. That says something. That says that, yes, we are willing to address the darkness, not by denying it or not by fluffing it up with pretty words, but really by bringing the light of our inquiry and understanding to it so that we can live with integrity connected to our deep values. I learned a lot in Bhutan. I learned something else. I learned about the amazing spiritual power of turning our attention from our values and aiming them outward into the world. In particular, using loving kindness to project into the world. That's a good bridge for our topic next month, because we're going to be talking about seeking the common good and the value of oneness. I'll tell you how I learned it. We went to visit a gigantic Buddha in Thimphu in Bhutan. Here's a picture of it so you can see how massive it is. But see how small the people are in the courtyard in front of it. It's like 170 feet high. Some people say it's the largest Buddha statue in the world. It's made out of gilded bronze, and it has inside of it, inside the body and the chest and the head, 125,000 smaller Buddha statues between 8 and 12 inches high. And one person says that there are more statues of Buddha in that city than there are human beings. And an interesting story, the statue was funded by people from Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and was constructed in China by Aerosans, a corporation that typically makes vehicles for garbage removal and fuel transportation and such. And then it was transported in smaller pieces by land and then put together by a Bhutanese. And I just love that because what a message about inclusion and diversity and collaboration. I just love that. Our group was able to go inside the Buddha into the court inside there and sit with a lama. Now, a lama is a spiritual leader, like a reverend, for example. And this lama initiated us into the use of the chant, Om Mani Padme Hum. It's a chant that some people say can activate the values of generosity, ethics, patience, diligence, focus, and wisdom. Now, when I say we were initiated into the use of it, the best way I can explain what that means is like when you get a new credit card in the mail, right? You can't use it right away. It has to be activated. You have to peel the sticker off the back and you have to make the connection. You've got to clear the lines of communication so that it can be usable and functional and effective. That's what we did. And the way it worked for us is we went in and we sat on the floor with the Lama inside the Buddha, and he gave us spiritual instruction, and then he led us in the prayer, and he got us on the right plane, and he in the instruction, he said something very interesting. He told us not to focus so much on ourselves, but instead, when we start our practice, to begin first by focusing on all sentient beings and imagine them healthy, happy, and free. And then he said, and then next, turn our attention to our mothers and fathers and teachers and loved ones and imagine them healthy, well, happy, and free, filled with loving kindness. And then, he said, and most importantly, then focus your loving kindness on those you have trouble with. Actually, the way the Lama said it was a little more strong. He said, focus on the people you still hate. It really made an impact on me, you know? And he said that this focus will generate goodwill and blessings that through our oneness connection will eventually bless us anyway. So, he taught us, we don't need to have to be overly concerned with our own personal needs. He advised us to use our energy and our spiritual practice for the ending of suffering of all sentient beings and to take a little time every day for their benefit. And he said that focusing on love and compassion is very important because when a being has that, they won't need anything else. Oh, I really loved that. He was so delightful, this Lama. He said, he instructed us to recite the chant, Om Mani Padme Hum, 108 times or more a day. And then he adjusted that. He said, or just do it a few times. And when you do it, focus on love and compassion, like, when you're on the bus or when you're standing in line or driving your car. And then he adjusted that. He said, or just say it once if you can. When you can. And when you say it, try to feel genuine love and compassion. And then playfully he added to that, he said, but do try to say the mantra all the time, non-stop, and feel that love and compassion all of the time. It made me think of our own teaching here at the Center for Spiritual Living. Your consciousness is generating something for the world right now. My consciousness is generating something for the world right now. What are we generating for the world right now? So let us put our attention on our highest value. So that which we are generating comes from the best that is in us. And the Lama's teaching got me to thinking about the similar Christian teaching. It says we are to pray without ceasing, rejoicing always, and giving thanks for everything. It got me to thinking about the lovely practice we have in our youth and family ministry where we teach our children through a candle lighting ceremony to identify with divine qualities, where the teacher lights a candle and says, God is life, and the children say, I am life. God is light, I am light. God is joy, I am joy. God is love, I am love. God is peace, I am peace. God is beauty, I am beauty. God is power, I am power. Now imagine with me that you're saying this to yourself 108 times while feeling loving kindness as best as you can. It's something you can do with your family at dinner time too. And you can talk to Susan Robinson in our youth and family program to hear how she does it with felt candles, so even the youngest little ones can participate also. And now, using the instructions of the Lama, his suggestion, I can take this and turn the attention from me and broadcast it out. I can think of someone, perhaps someone I have trouble with, or as the Lama said, someone I still hate, or someone I love, and insert their name. God is life, John is life. God is light, John is life, and so on. Like the Lama says, it doesn't take but a moment to do it. It doesn't take but a moment to have a thought and intention of loving kindness and to generate some good for this world. Another thing I learned in Bhutan is that people are both the same wherever you go and different wherever you go. We are both unique and similar. Our ways are both strange to each other and quite familiar to each other. That's the way of things. I'll tell you how I came upon this realization. During this month honoring Black history and integrity, I've become sensitive, hypersensitive to generalizations and prejudice in me and around me. So I notice it more now since we've been talking about it. And I noticed it at a festival. We were attending a festival, a spiritual festival in Bhutan, and we were wearing traditional clothing that the Bhutanese gave to us to wear. I felt a bit like an intruder at something that was very, very holy, and I was a little worried about cultural appropriation. But they assured us that they wanted us to wear this outfit. And so here's a picture of Kevin and I wearing the outfit. And I got to tell you, it's not easy to wear that outfit. I mean, there's a belt right on your abdomen that they, like a corset put in place, and they took such joy in getting us dressed up. And they told us that they really appreciated was they take it as a sign of respect for their culture and their religion. And strangers would come up to us and the other people in our group and help us with, the very complicated folds. Everything has to be folded exactly the right way, and helping us fix our sashes and advising us on what is proper to do and not to do. They were just delighted. And in all of this welcomingness and this inclusion, I spotted something else. I overheard another guide talking to his tourists, and being as human as can be, he said in a moment of frustration, what happened was a bus arrived with a group of tourists from another country. And the guide got flustered and he said crossly, "Oh, the tourists from this country, they're so rowdy and inconsiderate and pushy and rude." And I looked, and then I looked at the group he was describing, and certainly there were people who matched his description. Yet, at the same time, there were people in that group who were not rowdy, who were perfectly peaceful, mindful, and calm. And in that moment, I thought of our affirmation, I am truthful in facts and motives. And I asked it as a question, am I truthful in facts and motives? And it reminded me to be careful not to characterize whole groups of people with one description. It reminded me to avoid prejudging someone because of an experience I had with someone who looks just like them. Now, I want to wrap this up with two readings, one from our own founder, Ernest Holmes, who wrote, "When we understand the law, we learn to consciously embody what we wish and think of this only. And then we are drawn silently toward it. Every day, every moment, every second, there is choice. We have the right to choose what we wish to experience." Now, the law he is talking about is the law of cause and effect that says what we are inside generates something outside. And when he says embody what we wish, he's talking less about possessions and wealth and things and more about the qualities, the values that we've been talking about, such as kindness and courage and inclusivity. Because according to spiritual law, that which we dwell upon, we are drawn silently toward. And when he says we have the right to choose what we wish to experience, he's talking about our inner experience, what we choose to do with our inner life, how we choose to respond to this world. And finally, from our recommended book of the month, Howard Thurman writes something beautiful. He says, "If sweeping through the door of my heart, there moves continually a genuine love for you, it bypasses all the hate and all the indifference and gets through to you at your center. You are powerless to do anything about it." Isn't that wonderful? I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale, letting your eyes close. as we each in our own way take a moment to turn our attention to the divine in whatever way we understand it. Perhaps as the ground of all being, perhaps as the great law of life, perhaps as eternal love, the mind of creation, whatever it is. It is eternal, immortal, everywhere present, unconflicted, and all that is. And I identify myself with that, with its love, its power, and its presence. And I recognize the same is true for everyone here. And so together we call that presence forth into expression in the form of loving kindness. And we do so on behalf of all sentient beings, letting it radiate through our thoughts, through our words, and through our actions, so that we may be great examples of reverence and respect in this world now and forever. Now, I give thanks for this as this prayer is being spoken. I know it is being acted upon by law. And so I feel the change and the openness in me to become guided by my highest values. And together we say, and so it is. I invite you now to take a deep breath in, followed by a sigh.
Here's a little-known Black history science of mind fact. Pearl C. Wood was born in a small Arkansas town in 1892. A teacher, she became a seeker of spiritual truth. She relocated to Kansas City, where she became active in church and civic work. In 1930, she went to California. There she visited various churches but could not find the spiritual uplift she desired until one day, a voice inside her said, "The thing you're looking for is within you." She returned to Kansas City and became an ordained minister in the Metropolitan Spiritual Church of Christ. A short time later, she permanently moved to LA and founded Triangular Church of Truth in her living room in 1932. She became affectionately known as Mother Wood. The church grew, and 24 years later, in 1956, she affiliated with Religious Science. Ernest Holmes loved Mother Wood's ministry, and at one event stunned the crowd announcing, "If she's your mother, then I'm your father." When Mother Wood retired in 1972, her son-in-law, Dr. Philip Pitts, became senior minister at Triangular Center for Spiritual Living. And when he retired, her grandson, Reverend Greg Pitts, stepped into leadership. Mother, son-in-law, and grandson, 3 generations of strong spiritual leadership. Dr. Pearl C. Wood, a Black evolutionary in science of mind.